All right, so today's lecture is over chapter 1. We'll get through all of chapter 1 today. What you will notice about the first few chapters probably is that they jump around a little bit. So we're just really introducing you to economic terminology, concepts, some tools, things like that. So it sort of seems choppy, and it actually will seem pretty easy because I'm just teaching you terminology and things, but don't let that lure you into a false sense of security about this class. It does ramp up pretty quickly, so enjoy the first few chapters. Pretty simple, the homework's pretty easy, but just keep that in mind. For those of you who had me for macro, chapters 1 through 4 are going to be exactly the same as the ones we had in macro, so do with that what you will, but just wanted to give you a heads up about that. So the first thing that we're going to do today is we're going to have a short discussion just to get us thinking about different aspects of economics and economic thinking. And it's this discussion question right here. So my question to you is, and I actually want you to put your answer and perhaps a one-sentence justification for your answer in the comment box. But which is more valuable, diamonds or water? Make a personal choice. I'm not going to give you any more information. I'm not going to answer any questions. Just if you had to pick one, what would it be, diamonds or water? And give me just a sentence on why you made the decision that you made. Diamonds because they cost more. Water, lots of waters. Water because we can't survive without it. Diamonds because you could buy water with them if you needed it. Water because unlike diamonds it has uses. Water because it's a necessity of life. Good. It's essential. Yeah, perfect. Diamonds because they're a more limited resource. We'll talk about that. Yeah, good. Diamonds because there's less diamonds on Earth. Okay. Diamonds are actually very common, Michael. You're right. They're artificially scarce. All right, good. So let's talk about this. Water is always the most common answer in this discussion, rightfully so. It is, we can't sustain life on Earth without water. That's a fact, and I can't argue with that, right? If I was going to raise my hand, which is usually how we do this in the classroom, I would have gone for diamonds myself, and I'm going to explain to you why. It's not that the answer water is wrong. I'm just going to give you my economic perspective on why I think diamonds for me is the right answer, okay? There's not a right or wrong answer. So water sustains life. Water is necessary to produce all of our food supply. It maintains ecosystems. We use it for sanitation, for cleanliness. We use it for recreation. We use it in industry. We could probably think of 100 different things that make water important, but the number one thing that all of you said, and that comes up over and over again, it sustains life, period. Okay, so yeah, seems like water's valuable. Okay, then we have diamonds on the other hand, which probably costs more on an ounce by ounce basis. There is an artificial scarcity of diamonds in that diamonds are actually very common, but to keep them scarce, they're actually warehoused. Diamonds are mined a lot of the time, not necessarily to sell, but just so that they're not available, so that they can mine them and put them in a warehouse someplace, and so that diamonds maintain their value and their scarcity, okay? But diamonds are more expensive ounce by ounce. They actually have a sentimental value, if you will, especially in our particular economy. We put a sentimental connotation with a diamond. They are used in industry. They do have practical purpose. It's one of the hardest substances on our planet, so it is used in industry many times for cutting, precision cutting and things like that. So there definitely are their applications. I didn't give you a lot of context. I didn't give you a lot of perspective on what valuable meant, how I defined value. Is that about dollars? Is that about sentiment? Is that, what is that about? What do you mean valuable? And so you had to really put your own value system, if you will, or use your own way of economic thinking to make this decision. And that's why you came up with different decisions in some cases. I could have predicted most of you were going to say water, because that's usually how it turns out in any regular classroom. Here's my argument, okay? And this isn't because I'm right. It's just my argument, right? We could sit here and we could all have arguments today, but I'm the only one that gets it, okay? So my argument is this: the total value of water is higher than the total value of diamonds in our life because it gets to sustain us. But I would say that right here, right now, in my life today, diamonds are more valuable. Why? Well, here's my case in point, okay? Is that if I offered each one of you, right, and I usually do this in a classroom setting, so I'm standing right in front of you, okay? I say, here's my diamond ring, okay? And here is a glass of water in a old Harkins cup. You can pick one. Each student gets to pick one to take as your little souvenir of our first day of class together. What are you gonna pick? And y'all want this, right? But you said this was more valuable. And it's because of the specific context of that, right? In a classroom at the Franke College of Business in Flagstaff, Arizona on the 14th of August, y'all want the diamond because value is really determined by your circumstance. If we were in the Franke College of Business and I offered you this cup of water, where do you think I would have gotten the water from? At Franke. At Franke, where do you think I would have gotten the water from? Where would I have gotten it? Yeah, the building. I would have gotten it at the water fountain outside of my office in the building. How much did that cost me? Didn't cost me anything, right? I can have as much as I want. No one's going to stop me. I could probably take a jug out there and fill it up and nobody's going to stop me. It didn't cost me anything. Now, granted, it cost you something, right? Because you do pay to be there, okay? So it did cost you something, but it didn't, but it didn't cost me anything, right? So it has to do with thinking about total value, which I already said the total value of water is greater than the total value of diamonds, versus something we call marginal value. Marginal value is the additional incremental value of something. So 1 unit of diamond right here today, right now, is worth more than 1 unit of water. Glass versus ring, right? Here today. Now you catch me in the middle of the desert without any water and I'm going to have a slightly different answer, right? So it's very circumstantial. So when we think about value, we just need to be clear that we understand if we're talking about total value or marginal value. And that's really all this discussion topic aimed to do, was give you a little context about value, okay? All right. And that it's not always about money. Here's the thing, I walk into high school classrooms sometimes to guest speak or things like that, and I say, what is economics? What do you think they say to me? Money. Economics is money. No, economics isn't money. Economics is choices. and they don't always have to do with money. So when you say water's more valuable, it's because you got to live. You can't really put a monetary value on that, right? All right. Sorry about the PowerPoint thing. I can't figure out how to get the PowerPoints to be full size and still be able to control Zoom. I'll see if I can figure that out before next time. But hopefully you remember these PowerPoints are on Cengage over in the Google Drive along the right-hand side. Okay, so we can't talk about economics without talking about resources. Resources are the basic for a lot of economic theories and the study of economics really as a whole, okay? Resources, depending on the class you're in, depending on who your instructor is, who the author of your book is, et cetera, resources are referred to as different things. So they could be referred to as inputs. They could be referred to as factors of production. They're whatever goes into the production of goods and services. They're the things we use in their rawest form to produce goods and services in our economy. This next statement is in red. I'm not sure if you can see that. Anytime you see something in red, it's because I feel like it's a pretty basic, fundamental, important statement about econ. Goods and services are scarce. So goods, those things that we go out and buy at Walmart or wherever, services, paying somebody to do something for you, okay? Goods and services are scarce because resources are scarce. It is the scarcity of resources that forces us to study economics. Resources, according to your author, and this is what we're going to use, I know that you'll come up with slightly different lists and slightly different classes, but they're all basically the same. The first one is labor. That's just an hour of labor. That's whatever you're paying somebody to do, right? It's a physical hour of their time would be considered the resource of labor. Capital is a good that we produce to produce other goods. So for example, you build a factory, not because you want a factory, but because you're going to use it to produce something else. You buy a piece of heavy equipment, you buy machinery for your factory, whatever it is, not because you want that thing. You want what that thing produces for you, okay? So at your house, you have all kinds of capital. You have a TV, right? You don't buy a TV because you're interested in having a big black plastic box sitting in a room, right? You want what it provides. So it's your capital. Your vacuum cleaner's capital, your washing machine's capital, your car's capital, like all of that stuff. You don't want it because it sits there. You want it because it does something, okay? Because it produces that final good or service that you're looking for. So that's capital. Natural resources, easy, oil, trees, water, gifts of Mother Nature. And entrepreneurial ability is the ability to come up with new ideas or make old ideas better. So humans do that, right? Capital, we could actually divide into two categories, physical and human. Physical capital is all that stuff we just talked about. And for the most part, when I talk about capital, that's what I'm talking about, physical capital, machines, the factories, etc. Human capital is in there as well. Human capital is training and education. So it's something that makes labor more productive, makes labor better, okay? So right now, you're taking classes at NAU to increase your human capital so that someone will pay more for your labor, okay? Your resource is really labor. But on top of that, you can add training and education that is also valuable and will be purchased along with your labor, okay? Okay, so we usually do this in a classroom, so I usually have people yell this out. If you want to unmute yourself, that would be great. If you don't want to, you put it in the chat box. Anyway, let's go through these. So what type of resource? Forest of trees. Natural, okay. Idea to improve a software program. It's going to be entrepreneurial ability. An hour of accounting services.
Labor.
It's just an hour of the service. We actually don't know what kind of training they have. But 1 hour of accounting services.
Labor.
Labor, thank you. A farm tractor.
Capital.
Capital, great. A farmer doesn't buy a tractor to sit in a field. They buy a tractor to produce a service. Yeah, taxi cab.
Capital.
Capital, thank you. Barrel of oil. Natural. And computer software. This one's a little tricky.
Is it entrepreneurial?
Not in general.
Is this also capital?
It would be capital. And this one, and that's why I said this is a hard one. I think for most of us, it's capital. Now, entrepreneurial, you're not wrong. There was somebody out there who thought about that new computer program or made it better or whatever. For somebody, that's actually their final good or service, right? That's actually what somebody out there produces. So for somebody, it's actually not a resource. It's their final good or service. So it is a little tricky, but I think for most people, a computer software program, we don't buy the computer software to say we own it. We buy the computer software to perform a final good or service for us. So that one's a little tricky and depending on the person, but I would say for 95% of the population, computer software is going to be capital for us. Good. All right. Scarcity of resources. Okay, there's a reason this is so big and I put it on one slide all by itself. It's because it's a pretty important thing to understand. Without scarcity of resources and therefore goods and services, and your unlimited wants, you just keep wanting stuff, there would be no need to study economics. So economics is about choices. It's about the choice we make to give up some things in order to get other scarce things. And so this whole economic decision-making concept is going to be something that really carries through several chapters. So understanding that it is the scarcity of resources, which then produce scarce goods and services, and the fact that you never stop wanting more, it's the reason we have anything to talk about at all. Okay? All right, so let's talk a little bit about economic choice. First, I need to define scarce goods and services from an economic perspective. So in economics, a scarce good or service is a good or service in which, and I know this sounds confusing, but I'll explain it here in a minute, in which the amount people desire, the quantity people desire of that good or service exceeds the amount available at a zero price. So basically what this means is if we offered a good or service for free to everyone, and we couldn't meet everyone's need or want or desire for that free thing, then it's scarce. And so if you think about things like houses and cars and clothes and food and whatever, if we offered it for free, could we physically make enough to satisfy everyone's desire for that good? For 99.99999% of things, the answer is no, we couldn't satisfy everyone's desire, which means it is a scarce good or service. So most of the goods and services that we talk about, really, no, all the goods and services that we talk about, you can assume they're scarce, okay? The example that we use in economics to think of something that's not scarce, and depending on where you're at, there could be a thing that's not scarce, right? Where you can satisfy everyone in your community or whatever, right? At a zero price. But the thing that we use over and over again is ocean water. We don't consider ocean water scarce. Why? Well, because it's kind of free. I mean, you really could go take all that you wanted. And we all have all we want. Yeah, I've taken all the ocean water I want, right? And there's still some left. So it's not scarce, okay? Weird example, but it's like the only one we can come up with that sort of holds true for for everybody, okay? Again, there could be specific circumstances, you know, especially with small communities or tribes or things like that, where within the confines of that community, there is something that's not scarce. But because goods and services are scarce, you and I have to make choices. When you make a choice to do something, to buy something, to spend your time doing something, you're giving something else up. So economics isn't just about money, it's about time and energy. So this morning, you're giving up 50 minutes of your life. You gave it up. You could have been doing something else, but instead you're here, you made that choice. So anytime you choose to do anything with your time, you're giving up other things you could have done with your time. It's like when you spend 20 bucks, you're giving up all the other things you could have bought with that 20 bucks. So choice is about gaining something, but also giving something up in the process. All right, like I said, it's a little choppy. We're a little all over the place, but we're switching gears from economic choice to economic decision makers. There's two basic categories of economic decision makers that we talk about. Primary is always going to be households. What are households? Households are any group of people typically living underneath the same roof, making economic decisions together. I'm not saying you couldn't be homeless and be considered a household. If there's a group of people making economic decisions together as a unit, we would typically consider them a household. So like you and your 3 roommates or whatever, you're a household because you're typically living under the same roof, deciding things like, you know, who's going to pay what portion of the rent, who's going to pay utilities, you know, who gets to park in the garage, who gets, you know, that's all household decision making, okay? So they can take different forms. But we're primary in our economy. Now, if you go to China or you go to Cuba or someplace like that, this is not going to necessarily hold true. So this is a US economic decision maker breakdown. So households are primary, A, because we demand goods and services. We're the ones that buy them. There's no need for a company in our economy to make a good that you and I don't want. Okay, doesn't make sense. So you and I demand products and services, goods and services. We also supply resources to the economy. Labor, some of you might have some natural resources. Some of you might own some lumber or oil or, you know, whatever, and your entrepreneurial ability. And then we have sort of this secondary tier of economic decision makers who are really trying to meet the needs. Well, theoretically, they don't always do a good job, but are trying to meet the needs of households. So that's going to be firms, companies producing the goods for us. That's going to be the government who is charged with supplying us goods and services as well, and the rest of the world. So here we're talking about international trade, things like that, imported goods. They really do supply goods to our economy, and some of these firms and government are actually going to buy our labor and our natural resources. So a lot of people are employed by the government, and the rest are employed by companies, firms, okay? So we're definitely most important in this economy. All right, the next thing I'm going to show you is the circular flow model. This is directly from your book. All the information on here, you already know. I'm just giving you new words, okay? You know so much more about economics than I think you realize. All I'm going to try and do is change the terminology or give you terminology for things that you already know happen, right? And so let's look at this outer blue ring really quick. Okay, we have 2 different markets. Markets, that's where buyers and sellers come together. So we have a product market. This is going to be final goods and services. And then we have a resource market. This is where things like labor and entrepreneurial ability and capital and natural resources are sold, okay? And so this outer circle is the flow of resources and goods between economic decision makers and markets, and the inside is going to be money, talking about the flow of money. So we'll see here that firms provide goods and services to the product market, which provides products to households. Households provide resources to the resource market, and firms buy resources from the resource market, okay? And then you can see here on the inside, right? Firms pay wages to the resource market for labor and all those other resources. That provides income to households. Households turn around and spend money on products, which provides revenue to firms, etc. You already know all of this happens, okay? Please make sure you take a close look at this when you are studying for your exam. I think I put it on your study guide too, to come back and look at this, just so you understand how stuff flows, okay? So now we get into the art and science of economic analysis, which is what the chapter is called, okay? So the thing you have to keep in mind about economics is it's a social science. It's a study of behavior, human behavior. Hard to predict, sometimes hard to analyze. But in economics, we try and come up with lots of models and theories and things that we think are mostly true to try and predict what's going to happen. And so we have to start out by talking about some of the things we think are usually true about humans and how they make economic decisions. And then we can come up with some models and some theories to sort of help us figure out what's going on and maybe what's about to happen, right? And so the first thing, I'm going to say things in the course of the semester that you're going to be like, yeah, that's not always true. You're totally right. It's not always true, right? But all we have is sort of those general things that we can say about most people that we really have to use as the basis for making some of these theories and models, okay? So the first thing that we need to talk about with economic analysis is that you and I practice something called rational self-interest, which means you and I are always looking to do what's best for us, period. And that's a basis for economic theory. We assume you're always going to do what you perceive to be in your best interest. Is it always in your best interest? No. Depends on who you talk to, right? It's a perception. And so when you look at people and you're making decisions and you're like, that's a stupid decision, or why did they make that decision? You can assume they actually thought that was the best decision for them. You can assume that because that's what rational self-interest tells us, okay? We always try and maximize our benefit. There is no reason for you not to try and maximize the benefit you get from every decision that you make. How to spend your time, how to spend your money, how to spend your energy. That brings us to sort of an interesting piece of this, is that if I'm always doing what's in my best interest, what's best for me, what maximizes my benefit, how do we explain why we do things for other people? And I actually get in some interesting debates about this, where I say, you do things for other people because it benefits you. You wouldn't do things for other people if it didn't benefit you, right? And there are probably some of you watching this right now that you're like, sometimes I just do things for other people just because it's what I'm supposed to do, just because it's nice, whatever. But what's in it for you, right? Now, the extent in which we do things for other people depends on what the personal cost to us is for doing those things. The cost is too high, we won't do it, right? But a lot of us do things for other people. We care about the welfare of others. In the chat box, begin to give me reasons why you would do something nice for somebody else. What are the reasons we do it? Or if not you, somebody else. Social pressure, good. It makes you feel good. We value the relationship. We want to keep relationships with people. Provides us happiness. It makes us feel better about ourselves, right? They might like us more. They might be our friend. Good karma, thank you. That's a great one. If you do something for someone, they might do something for you, right? Because we're trying to make appearances, right? Absolutely. Moral standard, thank you, okay? Because they're in a desperate state and you want to help them out, right? Great. Yeah, all good stuff, all good stuff. Another couple reasons I can think of, you want a tax write-off, right? And this is for companies and politicians and people like that, right? A reason we donate money to causes. We want the publicity that comes with that. Because we have a religious belief, right, about the afterlife or something like that. So all of those are perfectly valid reasons to do something for somebody else. I would ask you, next time you're going to do something for somebody else, just think about what your incentive is, right? It's an interesting reflection in yourself. But you are still practicing rational self-interest when you do stuff for other people because there is something in it for you, okay? Okay, so choice, economic choice. Here's the interesting thing about choice. Is choices many times require time and information to make. So like what you're having for breakfast this morning, that's not going to take you a lot of time and information. That's going to happen very quickly. The information you're going to collect is, what do I have that I could eat for breakfast? And the time that it takes you to analyze that and to make your breakfast, right? So that happens quick. It's pretty automatic. You make hundreds of economic choices every day. You're a programmed economic being, okay? Now, there are decisions that take a lot more time and information. Where are you going to go to college, right? Maybe what car are you going to buy? What job are you going to accept? That kind of thing. Time and information are valuable. You have more information at your fingertips, right, than any other generation has. But for free, essentially. But sometimes we actually pay people to gather information for us. So a good example is, I invest in the stock market, but I do not do, I don't pick stocks. I don't spend time acquiring information about companies and predictions and things. I just don't want to, right? It would take too much of my time. And so instead I pay somebody else, a financial analyst, advisor, to do that for me. So depending on the decisions that we have to make, sometimes we just would rather pay other people to do it. And it just depends on the decision in our particular circumstances, right? Rational decision makers will continue to acquire information as long as the expected marginal benefit or the expected benefit exceeds the cost of gathering. So when you decided to come to NAU, you did collect information, but then at some point you actually stopped because you thought you had enough, and you didn't think that spending more time on that decision would benefit you anymore, so you stopped. You didn't have all the information about NAU, but you had enough, and your time is valuable, and so you stopped gathering information, right? So we have easy choices, we have hard choices, but just keeping in mind that choice does require time and information, and sometimes a lot of time and information. All right, economic analysis. We're continuing on that choice conversation. Choice involves a change in status quo. What is status quo? Status quo is the current state of things. So when you make a choice on what to eat, where to go, who to spend time with, what classes to take, whatever, what you're doing is you're changing the way things currently are. So you're going to do something different, you're going to have something different, you're going to eat something, you're going to buy something that changes the way things are at this particular moment. We make decisions by comparing the expected marginal, incremental, right, benefit to the expected marginal cost. Okay, how much benefit am I going to get from that $10 pizza? It's going to cost me $10 plus whatever time is involved. And the benefit is going to be the satisfaction I get from it, which is very subjective. Only I can decide, right? So it's just the decision about that one pizza and that particular $10 helps you make that choice, right? Marginal is synonymous with incremental. Choice is very subjective. It's personal, right? The reason you make your choices are because of the personal costs and benefits to you, right? And that's how we explain why some people pay other people to do more stuff for them. For example, some people pay someone to clean their house because when they do that cost-benefit analysis, for whatever reason, the cost of cleaning their own house, right, is too high personally. Paying somebody else to do it has such a great benefit that they make that decision. So people who pay other people for services and who buy a lot of convenience type items, when they do the cost benefit analysis, right, they're doing it differently than people who don't purchase those things because of their particular circumstances, okay? All right, micro versus macro. This one's pretty straightforward. Micro is the study of particular markets. So here we're talking about particular businesses. So for those of you who want to manage, for those of you who want to own businesses, for those of you who want to be CEOs, whatever, this is really the nuts and bolts of running a business in particular markets. And macro is about the economy as a whole, how it's trending, the big things that are happening that change your overall economy and economic situation. So we talked about the art of economic analysis. So let's talk a little bit about the science piece of that. Economic theories and models are a dime a dozen, right? Everybody's got one. There are lots of them out there. The only ones you and I will talk about are the commonly accepted theories and models. Where I'm not going to throw anything crazy at you. We're just going to keep it pretty simple. The reason we have to create models and theories is because reality, people's behavior, the reality of people's behavior is much more complicated than a model can ever record. And so we're really just trying to simplify reality in a way that we can make it useful in terms of trying to make some prediction about human behavior and economics into the future. A good theory really helps us to understand this complicated and confusing human condition because we can't really predict everyone's behavior. It also helps us sort out data and understand how choices and economics trends. Positive versus normative statements. This is just like fact versus fiction, or fact versus opinion is really what this is, but we've given it terminology. The fact is, I think there's a joke that if you put 10 economists in a room, you'll end up with 14 different opinions or something, because economics is trying to predict human behavior, right? And there are a lot of different theories on how to do that and what it all means. But it's really important to make this determination, especially in economics. What is someone's opinion and what is actually proven by fact? So positive economic statements have some sort of factual basis, statistics, numbers, and normative economic statements are sort of those opinions, those theories that are really based more in opinion than in fact. We'll try and stick with positive economic statements in this class, although you each have a normative economic opinion and could each make a normative economic statement about just about anything, right? Individual versus average behavior, again, it's a study of human behavior, hard to predict. right? What everybody's going to do. But a lot of times we can make generalizations about groups of people where we can't specifically pinpoint an individual's behavior. So for example, like the water versus diamonds thing, I could have said that 90% of the class was going to choose water and 10% was going to choose diamonds within a couple of percentages. And I probably would have been right, because over the last 10 years, that's the data I've collected. Now, I couldn't have pulled one of you up on the screen and said, you're a waters person or you're a diamonds person. That's too hard, right? So individual behavior is too difficult to predict. So what we do is try and come up with some average behaviors that we can use in these theories and models going forward. So like I said, it's I'll say things that you'll know aren't necessarily true, but what we've done is just taken an average behavior of the group, and it's all we have to work with. All right, so a couple of just quick exercises here at the end. Just to get you thinking about how we do marginal analyses. So just thinking about the additional costs, benefits, etc., is kind of a hard thing to train our brain to do. But let's go through this exercise real quick, and you guys can throw stuff in the chat box. The quicker you do it, the quicker we're done. The owner of a small pizzeria is trying to decide whether to increase delivery area by 1 mile in each direction. We already have a pizzeria. It's just this 1 mile, right? What does she need to consider in order to ensure profitability? What does she need to think about just about this additional 1 mile? Throw some things in, see what you got. Gas for the cars. What's going to be the traffic? How many homes are there? What's demand for pizza in that additional mile? Is it factories or is it college students, right? Yeah, perfect. What's the delivery time? Yeah, great. Will employee insurance rise? Gas money. Will the pizza still be hot? What will the quality be? Awesome. No, this is all good stuff. Okay. So already have a pizza restaurant. We just need to do this small marginal analysis on just what this next 1 mile includes in terms of costs and benefits. Okay. This is what businesses do in reality. Okay. Awesome. Thank you. The next one. Some college majors pay twice as much as others. Why would a student exercising rational self-interest choose a lower paying major? Okay, so let's talk about the highest paying majors on campus. Probably med, like pre-med, or what is it called? Biomed, right? Engineers do well. Maybe some of the hard sciences, chemistry, things like that. Business majors do well in terms of job pay, things like that. But why, and you should be able to answer this personally, why did you not go looking for the highest paying major and choose that one? Or why would a student make a different decision? Throw some things in the chat box. Difficulty of classes, less schooling. What's your passion? Quality of life. What are your interests? Dislike for specific classes. Money isn't everything, right? Yeah, all non-monetary reasons for making a pretty big decision about your income, really for, I don't want to say the rest of your life because that's not necessarily true, but it wouldn't serve my best interest if I didn't like what I was doing. Yeah, sure. Really, the reason that we talk about this is because you have to remember that in economics, we are not always talking about money. We're not. We're humans, and we make decisions for a lot of other reasons other than money. And so when we're talking about costs and benefits, we're not talking necessarily about money. Sometimes with companies, we are. We got to get down to the numbers and the nitty-gritty. And when we're talking about people making decisions, we make decisions for a lot of reasons other than money. And so keep that in mind when we are considering the costs and the benefits, okay? It's one of the largest misconceptions about economics. All right, that's all I have. Now, remember that you have 2 homework assignments due on Sunday night at 11:59. One of them's huge. You don't want to screw that up. Do it now, right? And then your chapter 1. So it's the how to use MindTap or how to use Applia assignment that's worth 42 points. And your chapter 1 homework that's due 10 points. Please make sure that you allot plenty of time to get through that due on Sunday night. Does anybody have any questions for me? Anybody who doesn't or doesn't want to listen to answers to questions, you're free to go, and I'll see you guys on Monday. Thank you. You can put your question in the chat box, or you can just ask it. Are you going to post the PowerPoints somewhere? The PowerPoints are already posted on a Cengage MindTap in the Google Drive. You'll see a Google Drive icon off to the right, and all the PowerPoints for the entire semester and study guides for exams are already there. Good question. What is the relationship between government and firms? Yeah, it's big, political. It's very macroeconomic. But, you know, the firms provide goods to the government. The government buys a lot of goods from firms and services, contracts with a lot of firms. And the government gives firms regulations sometimes, tax cuts, tax benefits. Yeah, tax loopholes sometimes. And so, yeah, it's a very political relationship between government and firms. Yeah, that's the short answer. Any other questions from anybody?
I've got a question.
Yeah.
On the Cengage, so you know the little extra credit, just sign up thing?
Yeah.
Do we have to do anything for it, like go in and do anything, or just sign up?
No, and I should have mentioned this because I got a lot of emails about this. You just needed to sign up. The reason that extra credit assignment shows up is just like a placeholder in the grade book for me to then go enter the points.
Okay.
So I've entered all the points. So if you saw that line item, it meant you were signed up.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Sense? Yeah, and you should see, if you don't see those points, let me know, but I've put points in for everybody that signed up.
All right, thanks.
Okay,
All right, have a
yeah,
good day.
of course. Any other questions? All right, I'll see you guys Monday.